Charlie Kirk's assassination has become a breaking point in America. Known for promoting open, unfiltered debate on college campuses, Kirk was in the middle of one of his signature Prove Me Wrong sessions when tragedy struck. His wife, Erica, and their 2 children were present on September 10th when a sniper ended his life. This shocking event came just days after a Ukrainian refugee was brutally murdered on a bus in Charlotte during a race-driven attack, and only a year after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. The timing, so close to the 24th anniversary of 9/11, adds an eerie historical weight. While 9/11 had once united Americans, these latest attacks seem to be splitting the nation apart. Reactions to Kirk's murder showed how deeply divided the country has become. Many people expressed shock and grief, but thousands also celebrated his death. Some media outlets even used the opportunity to smear him rather than mourn. Kirk has always been described as a polarizing figure, a lightning rod, someone who either inspired or enraged. That polarization was clear when even Congress couldn't agree to hold a moment of silence in his honor. This is why his assassination may be the event that pushes America into an even more dangerous era of political violence. Surveys now show that around 43% of Americans believe a civil war is at least somewhat likely within the next decade. Kirk's death is being viewed not only as the loss of a prominent commentator, but as a symbol of just how extreme America's divisions have grown. Kirk's rise was meteoric. By the age of 18, he had founded Turning Point USA and built it into a political powerhouse with $55 million in annual revenue and more than 350 employees. He became a household name through viral campus debate videos where he would challenge students to argue with him under banners reading, "Prove Me Wrong." These clips spread widely across social media, making him one of the most recognizable conservative figures of the modern era. He was a regular on Fox News, podcasts, and Trump rallies, but on that Wednesday afternoon in Utah, while running one of his campus debate events, the conversation ended violently. About 20 minutes into the session, a sniper took a clean shot from 200 yards away, striking him fatally in the neck. His family witnessed everything. The image of a 12-year-old child seeing their father killed before their eyes is almost unbearable to imagine. Initial reactions brought rare glimpses of unity. President Trump ordered flags lowered to half-staff and called it a dark moment for the country. Even critics of Kirk expressed condolences for his family. Utah's governor, Spencer Cox, urged people to stop hating their fellow Americans. Politicians and celebrities across the political spectrum offered sympathy. For a few hours, it seemed like tragedy might unite Americans again, but that unity collapsed quickly. Within a day, political divisions resurfaced. Kirk's opponents online said he had it coming because of his views. Others mocked or celebrated his death. On the right, calls for vengeance spread rapidly. The fragile balance between grief and political tribalism shattered almost immediately. The hunt for the shooter only intensified tensions. At first, a 71-year-old activist named George Zinn was escorted from the scene by police, and some assumed he was the gunman, but he turned out to be a decoy. The real suspect remained at large for 48 hours until an extraordinary twist. His own father turned him in. The shooter, Tyler Robinson, had confessed to his father in a panic. With the help of a minister, and a federal marshal, Robinson's father convinced him to surrender. At a Thursday press conference, officials revealed that the killing was premeditated. Bullet casings were found with bizarre messages like, "Hey fascist, catch this," and "Whoever's reading this is gay." Investigators also uncovered evidence of ties to Antifa and discovered Robinson had openly complained that Kirk was spreading hate. The revelations about Tyler Robinson shocked many, but also confirmed fears that America's culture of political violence is accelerating. Robinson had reportedly spoken at family dinners about Kirk's upcoming appearance at Utah Valley University, suggesting the attack had been planned for weeks. Officials said this was not spontaneous. It was a calculated assassination motivated by radicalized ideology. This killing did not happen in isolation. It unfolded in a country already more divided than at any point since the Civil War. Analysts have long warned that the U.S. shows classic warning signs of societal fracture. Barbara Walter, a political scientist who studied more than 200 conflicts worldwide, has explained that America's democracy score has fallen into what experts call anocracy, a danger zone where political violence becomes far more likely. In practical terms, that means the risk of civil conflict in the U.S. could now be as high as 4% per year. At first glance, that seems small, but compounded over a decade, it means roughly a 40% chance of a significant civil conflict in the next 10 years. That number has alarmed both researchers and policymakers. For historical perspective, consider Yugoslavia. In the 1980s, it was one of the most developed and stable countries in the Balkans. Different ethnic groups lived side by side, intermarried, and shared schools. Then the economy faltered, nationalism rose, and within a few years, the state collapsed into brutal wars that killed over 100,000 people. The lesson is that societies don't always crumble overnight. They erode slowly, then fall all at once. America's current polarization is starting to look alarmingly familiar to that trajectory. The coverage of Kirk's death only deepened the sense of fracture. Video of people fleeing from gunfire spread across social media, while mainstream outlets struggled with how to report the event. MSNBC suggested, in the early confusion, that the shots could have come from one of Kirk's own supporters firing in celebration. Later, commentators even claimed Kirk brought the attack on himself by being too divisive. One guest argued that his rhetoric fostered hate, which inevitably led to violent outcomes. That commentator was fired after public outrage, but the damage was done. To many, it looked like parts of the media were downplaying or even justifying political violence. The New York Times obituary for Kirk also fueled anger. Rather than focusing on his role as a husband and father or his contributions to political debate, it portrayed him as a savvy manipulator who turned social media attention into power and money. Meanwhile, the president of the Oxford Union openly celebrated his death online. These responses convinced many conservatives that the establishment was dehumanizing their side, erasing the line between political debate and personal destruction. On the right, demands for vengeance began spreading fast. Calls for direct action, even violent retaliation, surged across online forums. Prominent figures declared that America had entered a new phase where assassination itself was becoming a political tool. Utah's governor labeled it a political assassination, but warned in somber tones that no speech or statement could fix what was broken. At the FBI's press conference after Robinson's capture, officials called the killing a watershed moment in U.S. history. They suggested it could mark the beginning of an era defined by escalation. The big question became, what comes next? Many experts worry Kirk's assassination could radicalize both sides even further. For his supporters, he is already becoming a martyr, a symbol of free speech destroyed by intolerance. For his opponents, the attack is being dismissed or even celebrated. The deeper danger is what this says about America itself, that large groups of citizens no longer see their opponents as fellow countrymen, but as existential threats. The polling numbers reflect this chilling reality. Around 43% of Republicans and 38% of Democrats now hold very unfavorable views of the other side, numbers that have more than doubled since the 1990s. That means nearly half the country sees political opponents not as neighbors with different opinions, but as enemies. Add in social media echo chambers, and the picture becomes explosive. When people begin living in different realities, political opponents stop being viewed as fellow citizens. Instead, they are seen as dangerous enemies. Kirk's assassination highlighted just how far America has drifted into this dangerous mindset. For millions, the question was no longer how to argue with opponents, but how to remove them altogether. This dynamic is not new. History shows how political violence can spiral. After Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was shot in 2011, both sides immediately blamed each other's rhetoric, even though the attacker had no clear political ideology. When Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1968, riots erupted in nearly 200 American cities, leaving dozens dead and thousands injured. Back then, though, the country had only 3 main television networks. Everyone saw roughly the same footage, even if they disagreed on what it meant. Today, that common ground no longer exists. Media outlets frame the same events in completely different ways. A protest might look like a riot on one channel or a peaceful demonstration on another. The storming of the Capitol in 2021 or the Black Lives Matter protests were covered so differently that Americans often felt like they were watching 2 different realities. Social media platforms, driven by algorithms that reward outrage, only deepen the divide. Kirk's death is another reminder of how this division snowballs. The more people consume media that confirms their worldview, the less they see opponents as human. The more polarized they become, the more they believe extreme action is justified. That is how political assassinations go from unthinkable tragedies to predictable outcomes. Even beyond politics, America is already under immense strain. Researchers at MIT and the Club of Rome recently modeled global scenarios for the next few decades. Their conclusions were grim. Under a too little, too late path, wealthy societies would see well-being drop by 40% by mid-century. Economic stress, food shortages, and environmental decline would fuel more unrest. In that environment, every act of political violence carries the risk of triggering larger waves of instability. The assassination of Charlie Kirk looks like one of those sparks. His shooting was not just about one man. It was about what America has become. A place where assassination feels inevitable, where political disagreement has mutated into hatred, and where many openly cheer when rivals die. That is the most alarming part of this story. Not that a commentator was killed, but that so many were unsurprised. Experts warn that if this trajectory continues, the US could enter a period where violence becomes normalized in politics. Civil war is not guaranteed, but the ingredients are present: deep polarization, distrust in institutions, and a willingness to justify violence. Polls show 43% of Americans believe civil war is at least somewhat likely in the next decade. If that belief hardens, it risks becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. The bigger danger is cultural. Once citizens stop believing they share the same nation, the collapse accelerates. And already, 80% of Americans can't agree on basic facts. That is what makes this moment so precarious. The assassination was shocking, but the real crisis is how quickly many used it as another weapon in the political battlefield. Instead of mourning, people mocked. Instead of uniting, they divided further. It showed how far discourse has slipped, from debate into open conflict. And unless something changes soon, history suggests the violence will not stop here. The most unsettling reality of Charlie Kirk's assassination is that many Americans weren't shocked. For years, pundits, academics, and ordinary citizens alike have warned that the country was heading toward a breaking point. Now, with each new violent episode, it feels less like a warning and more like an inevitability. Back in early 2025, over 2,000 National Guard troops were already deployed across U.S. cities. Former officials warned that the government was slowly desensitizing the public to seeing armored vehicles and soldiers on American streets. At the same time, threats against public officials reached record highs. Members of Congress reported more death threats in 2024 than ever before, with multiple assassination attempts, including 2 against Trump himself. The message was clear: political life in America had become a dangerous occupation. Public opinion reflects that exhaustion. Polls reveal 65% of Americans feel drained when thinking about politics. 55% feel angry, and only 10% feel hopeful. Worse, each side increasingly sees the other as an existential threat. By 2024, nearly half of Republicans and Democrats described the opposing party in deeply hostile terms. This isn't just disagreement, it's demonization. In this climate, Kirk's assassination hit like a bomb. For his supporters, he immediately became a martyr for free speech, a man silenced for daring to host debates. For his critics, his death was mocked, excused, or exploited for political points. That reaction may be even more dangerous than the killing itself, because it signals a country where empathy has vanished. If Americans cannot even agree that assassination is wrong, if many openly celebrate it, then the social contract holding the nation together is in peril. Political scientists describe this as a point of dehumanization, where opponents are not seen as citizens, but as enemies. Once that barrier breaks, violence becomes easier, even expected. History shows where this road can lead. In 1968, King's assassination, the most unsettling reality of Charlie Kirk's assassination is that many Americans weren't shocked. For years, pundits, academics, and ordinary citizens alike have warned that the country was heading toward a breaking point. Now, with each new violent episode, it feels less like a warning and more like an inevitability. Back in early 2025, over 2,000 National Guard troops were already deployed across U.S. cities. Former officials warned that the government was slowly desensitizing the public to seeing armored vehicles and soldiers on American streets. At the same time, threats against public officials reached record highs. Members of Congress reported more death threats in 2024 than ever before, with multiple assassination attempts, including 2 against Trump himself. The message was clear: political life in America had become a dangerous occupation. Public opinion reflects that exhaustion. Polls reveal 65% of Americans feel drained when thinking about politics. 55% feel angry, and only 10% feel hopeful. Worse, each side increasingly sees the other as an existential threat. By 2024, nearly half of Republicans and Democrats described the opposing party in deeply hostile terms. This isn't just disagreement, it's demonization. In this climate, Kirk's assassination hit like a bomb. For his supporters, he immediately became a martyr for free speech, a man silenced for daring to host debates. For his critics, his death was mocked, excused, or exploited for political points. That reaction may be even more dangerous than the killing itself, because it signals a country where empathy has vanished. If Americans cannot even agree that assassination is wrong, if many openly celebrate it, then the social contract holding the nation together is in peril. Political scientists describe this as a point of dehumanization, where opponents are not seen as citizens, but as enemies. Once that barrier breaks, violence becomes easier, even expected. History shows where this road can lead. In 1968, King's assassination sparked riots in nearly 200 cities. In Yugoslavia, collapse began with rhetoric, then escalated through violence until neighbors turned on each other. No one is saying the US is destined to follow those exact paths, but the warning signs are there. And this is why Kirk's assassination may be remembered as a tipping point. It wasn't just about him, it was about what his death revealed. A country so fractured that murder is no longer unthinkable. Media so polarized it frames tragedy as victory, and citizens so divided that half expect civil war in the next decade. The United States has survived assassinations before: Lincoln, Kennedy, King. Each time, the violence marked a turning point in American history. What makes this moment different is that fewer people now believe the system can hold together. The FBI called it a watershed moment, and they may be right, because the true danger isn't whether America can survive one killing, it's whether America can survive becoming the kind of nation where political killings feel inevitable. That is the haunting question left in the wake of this tragedy, and the most disturbing truth of all: not enough people were surprised. This moment forces us to confront a hard reality. Democracies don't collapse overnight. They erode piece by piece until suddenly the unthinkable becomes normal. The assassination of Kirk may be remembered not just as a personal tragedy, but as a warning for all of us about where unchecked division can lead. What do you think? Is America heading toward a breaking point? Or can the country still pull itself back from the edge? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this report gave you something to think about, please like the video, share it so others can join the conversation, and subscribe with the bell icon for more deep dive analysis. Together, staying informed is our first line of defense against repeating history.